Go ahead.
Our mission. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents. Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift from a state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. Helping Parents Heal goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non-dogmatic way. Helping Parents Heal affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at all Helping Parents Heal meetings is voluntary. All discussions that take place at affiliate-led meetings are confidential. We hope that participants will learn from and share with each other. Zoom meetings run by leadership are not confidential. These meetings typically feature guest presenters and are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members worldwide can watch and benefit. Neither type of Helping Parents Heal meeting is designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics such as afterlife evidence and connecting with our children who have passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinions of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members, so we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here with us this evening.
Yes, welcome everyone. And I'm excited to introduce Brian. We're going to have very short introductions so that he's able to speak. He'll be introducing everyone else who's on this panel, on this Zoom panel. Brian Smith is a Shining Light dad, a life coach, a grief partner, and a small business consultant. He is on the board of Helping Parents Heal and the SoulPhone Foundation, and he is a caring listener for Helping Parents Heal. Brian is the author of Grief to Growth, Planted, Not Buried. He is the host of the Grief to Growth podcast. You can learn more about him at www.grieftogrowth.com. I will put that in the chat box. And without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Brian. Thank you, Brian, and welcome.
Hey, thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, everybody. It's good to be here. I'm going to introduce my wife, Tywana, Ty Smith. She's here with me. She's in the same house, but she happens to be in a different office. We are the parents of Shayna Smith, who passed away in 2015 at the age of 15. Reason for our meeting today is I had done a video. Someone asked me a question about how child loss impacts a couple's relationships. So I did a short video on that, and I posted it on my site. And Elizabeth asked me to come and talk to the group about it today, because there's a very commonly held myth that when you lose a child, that it's almost inevitable you're going to get a divorce. A really well-meaning friend who actually had a terminally ill son at the time when Shayna passed said to me, it's, really a shame about your daughter passing, and it's really a shame that, there's a 85% chance that you're going to get divorced. I do want to let everybody know that is a myth. It's a very, very commonly held myth. It comes from a book that was written in the 1970s. A woman made that claim, never had any research to back it up, and then it became repeated over and over again. Subsequent research has shown that the divorce rate for people who have lost children is actually no higher. In fact, it might be lower than from the general public. So what I wanted to talk about today is some coping mechanisms. How do we grieve differently? How do we get along? How does it impact our relationship? Because it certainly will, and it's up to us as to how it does. So first of all, I want to introduce everybody that's here so everybody knows who will be speaking. We've got first Carol and Tony Allen. Carol Allen is a member of the board of Helping Parents Heal. She's the author of the book, Mom, I'm Not Gone, title lives. She and her husband, Tony, raised their two boys in Cave Creek, Arizona. She became very involved in Helping Parents Heal with her 19-year-old son, Tyler, passed in a motorcycle accident in 2015. And that sent her on a spiritual journey that has become a huge part of her life. She wants to help others find joy again and realize that our kids are here. She's now an affiliate leader in Cave Creek, and she's a caring leader for Helping Parents Heal. She also hosts our book club meeting quarterly. Tony Allen is with Carol. Tony is Carol's husband and has been our AV wizard for both Helping Parents Heal conferences and done a fantastic job there. We've also got with us Lynn and Jeff Hollahan. They're the parents of two beautiful children, Devin and Kelsey. In November of 2009, they received a phone call which changed their lives. Their son, Devin, had gone missing in Frankfurt, Germany. After a month-long search, their worst fears were realized when his body was found in the Main River downstream from Frankfurt. Their world shattered. They wandered their house aimlessly until Devin began to make his presence known through mediums and signs. And these amazing and unmistakable signs proved beyond any doubt that not only was Devin not gone, he was in fact very present in our lives. Lynn is a founding member and a co-affiliate leader of Helping Parents Heal Scottsdale Book Club. She's also the point of contact for our Helping Parents Heal caring listeners. Jeff is a board member and also a caring listener. We've got with us also Ernie and Christine Jackson. They're Shining Light parents and they live in Arizona. In 2009, the Jackson family was transformed forever when 9-year-old Quentin Stone Jackson, the son of Ernie and Christine, and brother of Cheyenne, was killed in a tragic accident during the family's annual vacation. Ernie is a board member and he's a regular presenter. You've probably seen Ernie at some of the meetings before. And then we've got with us Lisa and Rick Wilcoxon. They're parents of two beautiful boys, both in spirit. Michael Angelo was born in 1988 and crossed in 2000 at the age of 12 from pneumonia. Michael was born very healthy, but had special needs due to having a severe toxic reaction to his first DPT shot at the age of 4 weeks. Anthony is Lisa and Rick's other shining light. And she says, I know he was born as a golden gift. Anthony was 6 when Michael crossed, and Anthony was everything that they lived for. He was a freshman at Arizona State University when he transitioned from being poisoned by a synthetic drug at a party in 2013. Lisa is a recommended provider for Helping Parents Heal. She's a caring listener and affiliate leader, a fantastic medium, and an affiliate leader of three affiliates. Rick, I already did introduce you guys, didn't I? So what I wanted to do is we could talk about our experiences, I guess. What was it like when our children first passed, and how did it, impact our relationships? And I'll start off with us. For us, I'd already studied the afterlife quite a bit when Shayna passed. And one thing that we all have in common, I think, as couples, I think I can speak for everybody, is we believe our kids are still with us. So that was something that I knew right away, but Tywana, not so much in terms of studying the afterlife. So we quickly found Helping Parents Heal, which was great. And we both really got into it. So Tywana, you might want to talk about how you felt about it when Shayna passed.
Well, I never really liked to face death. My father had passed. That's probably the closest person to me, like about 5 years, I guess, before Shayna. And, I just thought he's gone. He's older and, he had dementia. And so I was like, he's just gone. But after Shayna passed, I started questioning everything. Like, where is she? Is she alone? Will I see her again? So I just dived into reading and listening to podcasts or whatever. And I just tried to find a way that would bring peace to me about the fact that in my mind, she had really just vanished. And so I just dove into reading about some of the books that were most helpful to me, probably though, were books from parents who had lived through having a child pass and realizing that there was life on the other side of that. And so I just got into books and podcasts and just started finding out that, she is still right here. Like she has not gone. I get signs from Shayna all the time. And I just, I know for a fact that our children have not left us. So it was just a lot of studying. And I feel like it's an ongoing thing too. I mean, I continue to read and listen to podcasts, and I have a group of great soul sisters that have just been like such an encouragement to walk through with this. We're all at kind of different points. So it's really helpful to find other people who are walking the same journey and just kind of, have other people to talk to, like this group too. Helping Parents Heal has been amazing for Brian and I. So I'm so grateful to have found this group so early on.
I have to interject something. I apologize. When I was reading through the bios, I got Tony and Rick mixed up. So I was thinking I already said that, but Rick Wilcoxon is our volunteer videographer and did our 2 video conferences. So I didn't want to leave Rick out. So anybody else, what was your experience early in terms of, like, did you guys have the same beliefs in terms of the afterlife, or were they different?
Ours were very different, if I can chime in. Lynn has always lived her life by signs, to the point that we made fun of her, prior to Devin passing. She felt things, she knew things that she had no way of knowing. So I think we were blessed in that she had the desire to find out what those signs meant. So she was off doing that. I couldn't do that. I think I was a little bit jealous of her having the time and the willingness to do that. I had to go back to work and do my best to put on a brave face, which is what a lot of dads do, just kind of push it down. So Brian, you said something earlier about men and women grieving differently. And not only did we grieve differently, but we grieved separately for the first, I would say, month or so, or maybe even a little longer. Yeah. Our daughter was living with us, and we just sort of wandered around the house aimlessly. When we weren't wandering, we had each kind of taken up residence in a different room. And for us, it was just, well, I can only speak for myself. For me, I just could not face the grief and the sorrow, the total sadness in the faces of my girls. I just couldn't do it. But as luck would have it, we happened to go through this process at what became the epicenter of Helping Parents Heal. And you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I also want to backtrack. So we were very fortunate that we had a medium kind of follow us on our journey while Devin was missing. So for me, that was very helpful, just to start getting in touch with signs from him before we even knew really what happened to him. But yes, we were very lucky to be in the epicenter, and we got hooked up with Mark Ireland and Elizabeth shortly after, and they became our friends and our lifeline. So like Ty said, that we just had this amazing local group that has expanded through the years, and they're our friends, and we wouldn't be where we are without them.
But the other guys, what were your experiences like early?
I can speak. In the beginning, Tony and I, his father passed away when his father was only 55. So he was always watching John Edwards, and he believed it. I honestly, because I hadn't had any loss, I didn't really, I would say, well, if you want to see him, I didn't really believe in anything at that point. So when Tyler first passed away, of course, I just thought he was gone, and I went into a dark hole right from the get-go. And Tony, I would get mad at him because he was so worried about me that I thought he wasn't grieving, which is really funny because he loves Tyler so much, and and they have such a close relationship, but he can only focus on me. So I would get mad at him. But once we did definitely come together early on. We were always together. I stopped working for a year. He tried to work the first couple months and took an 8-month sabbatical. And we're fortunate in the sense that for us, we are on the same page 100%. Now, that being said, I'm so involved with Helping Parents Heal. So I get to talk to all of my tribe from Helping Parents Heal. Elizabeth, I always said she was my earth angel, whereas Tony has me. He's not as open talking to others. So I feel like now if anything, I try to help him more years later, because I feel like I'm a little bit further ahead, mainly because we both believe 100% that Tyler's with us. But I feel like I'm proactive constantly with HPH, and he works all the time. I work too, but I make that time. Tony, do you want to talk?
So I agree with Jeff. I think we parents grieve, husband and wives grieve, but they also grieve differently. And in the very beginning, Carol was in such a bad place. I think I went into protector mode and made it my job that I had to rescue her, sorry, for herself, for me, and for our other son, TJ, because she was just in such a bad place. And I did kind of follow it. I listened to John Edwards a lot, but when I was much younger and I was living in Central Illinois, there was a lady called Greta Alexander, who was a well-known medium in that area. And I remember the police going to her for different cases they had to solve. So I was always kind of in tune to that possibility and wanted to know more. And then as far as Brian, what you said about couples and the possibility of a higher rate of divorce and stuff, for me, it's like, there's only one earthly person that knows losing Tyler, that's Carol. So we did get each other, and we were on the same plane, and I think that really helped a lot. But also in my head, I could almost hear, and I was telling myself as we were going through this process, if I see Tyler tomorrow, what do I want him to say to me? What the hell, Dad? Or good job, Dad, way to go. And that's how we slowly went through our process.
And I think that actually we're close. I mean, we've always had a great marriage, but I think this has really, I can't imagine people get divorced. I think if they get divorced, it's not because of the passing. That just kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back. I think this can actually bring a couple so close, because again, they understand each other, where, they both have that same love for the child.
I agree. I'd say Ernie and we grieved differently as well. I was brought up very spiritual, so I knew, and had losing my dad 6 years prior to my son, 2 days apart. My dad used to send me signs all the time. So I knew eventually the signs would come from Quentin once I got through my healing process of, trying to suppress my pain with drugs, because I had a lot of pain that I endured from the accident. So once I got through that process, I started to get the signs from Quentin. But Ernie grieved a little bit differently, where I believe he went into work mode and speaking mode, in sharing what had happened to us and all the ahas of what happened to us, because that was powerful. The signs, yeah, that he got immediately. Yeah. What are you gonna say?
I'll just reiterate that we did grieve very, very differently. I wasn't consciously spiritual. I did not know death like some of you here on the panel. So I did know. I mean, I was worse than that. I was one of those. I was a coward when it came to death, if you will, because I didn't know what to say and I couldn't fix it. So I was one of those acquaintances and friends who wouldn't show up. So when Quentin transitioned, and blank slate, no knowledge, immediately began to visit, it lit me up. And my grieving process was talking to people. I told my tribe in the hills of Colorado, just please don't leave me alone. Don't leave me alone with my emotions. And Christine and I initially, so we were on 2 different pages, and Christine got mad at me. She said, she flat out called me out about 6 weeks after Quentin passed. She said, you don't even care. You just want to tell the story. And it's not easy. We do grieve differently. And And through the grace of God and, guardian angel or Quentin, I knew not to engage that pain, so I kind of stepped away. Our first speaking engagement, if you will, we went together and we walked in there kind of separate, and we walked out hand in hand, and Christine looked at me and said, we have to, it's not just telling a story, we have to share this. And we kind of came together at that point and kind of walked together going forward.
And that's how Quentin's messages became, because it wasn't just a story, it was messages that we needed to reiterate to others. You will get them in time, you will get the messages. And it has brought us closer. That was, we were 17 years then, we're now going to be approaching 31.
Yeah.
So you can become closer.
Go ahead.
I agree with that. With Anthony, we became closer than we ever had been. But a dozen years before, when we first lost Michael, it very different. Lisa had just lost her mom. I hadn't lost anybody close to me in my family. It was a busy time in our life, and we were both right back to work real soon, and it was just like delayed grief. We had some grief, but it wasn't very formal, didn't do anything. And I believe a dozen years later, when we lost Anthony, the bottom just fell out. And we'd both been religious, going to church, probably the most church we'd been to when it happened. And I didn't believe anything anymore. It was just too hard to grasp. And then losing both her children was just too hard to comprehend. And then we were inseparable for months. She took a leave of absence. I had my own company, and she went with me to Sedona. But we got very close, as somebody else said, something, the only other one who knows what that's like. It was like relearning life all over. Had no clue how to handle anything that was coming at us, and didn't know anybody who had. So we were just struggling, and we're all that each other had. And helping parents heal after Anthony, and good counseling from Dr. Cacciatore just gave us a new approach to navigate the world that we had no expectations for. So we got really close during that time. Go ahead.
Well, to go back to what Rick said about Michael was 10 and Anthony was 3 when I met Rick. And so Michael crossed about 2 years after we had been dating. And in fact, Rick had a wonderful, beautiful reading last night in Helping Fathers Heal from Michael. And that just touched my heart so much, because Rick always said those were his sons. And that, the step parenting throws a whole new element into it. And I'm sure there's others who can understand that. With Michael, it was very isolating for me. My grief was very isolating for me. As Rick says, we just went on to what we were doing. Well, half of us did. The other half was just kind of, in shock that my son had crossed, and him being special needs. There's also that other element. So a lot of side elements going on, but I can single-handedly sit here and tell you, it is my belief that Elizabeth Boisson saved our marriage. In fact, I get choked up. She knows the story, and it's true, because I had always believed and known in mediumship. I used to go with my mom to see James von Prague when, before my boys were even born. And it was tough when immediately I knew that I was a medium, because as I was going to these grief retreats on my own, I was seeing kids everywhere, and that caused a big problem in my marriage. And
I will tell you that if one of the spouses is struggling with this idea, it's our children that will show them the way. You can't force that on anyone. And I see Tony nodding there. I just know that to be true because Michael and Anthony showed Rick things that I just couldn't have done. And of course, Rick had an experience with Anthony. He saw him sitting right here at this kitchen counter right after he crossed, but grieve very differently. We all do. I see everyone's head shaking here. And that's the thing to acknowledge, is try not to look at your differences. I just invite you to allow compassion for each other. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, I think that's a point to kind of emphasize, because we talked about, excuse me, grieving differently, and it can also be perceived as the other person's not even grieving, because again, stereotypically, a lot of times men, we go into protector mode, we go into doer mode, we might turn back to work. A lot of times we don't like to be emotional in front of other people, sometimes even our spouse. And I tell people, I've had couples, we're just talking to me like, well, I don't think he's grieving at all. I'm like, I bet you he's crying in the shower and you don't even know it, because we do feel like we have to protect that other person, so that's a stereotype, but I think it's often true, but it can bring us closer together, as I think it has with all of us, but it can also drive you apart if you don't respect the way the other person is grieving. And if you can't find a way to come together and talk about your beliefs that you hold in common. We've noticed that even with Helping Parents Heal, it's mostly women in the organization. Fortunate to have a bunch of men here tonight, but a lot of times it's the women that are the ones doing the healing work, and the guys are still in doing mode. So any suggestions for anybody who is going through that, where like one spouse is doing it differently than you are? How did you guys handle that coming back together?
I'll go.
Space.
I'll speak for me. We found a commonality. We were grieving differently, and like I said, we were grieving separately, but we found a commonality. We tried to find that in our faith community, and that didn't work, and that became readily apparent like almost immediately. But we needed to figure out something that we could do, and what we found was hiking, which happened to be one of Devin's passions as well. And we started going on Sundays in lieu of church, and we found ourselves going on long hikes, and we would talk about it. We would relive the memories. And yeah, there was some pain, there was some tears, but we did it. We were doing that together. Mm-hmm. And we felt, I think after the first couple of hikes, we felt like he was, well, now we know he was there with us. It wasn't, might've been apparent to you. It was not apparent to me early on. Mm-hmm. I was a little slow in that department, but I think for me, that commonality and just finding a way that we could celebrate our son and be together while doing it was the start for coming together and learning how to grieve together.
Yeah, agree. We made a routine out of it. So every Sunday we would go every Sunday morning, and like Jeff said, we called it church, and it was far more meaningful than most churches services we had gone to.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, but for us, it was all we could do at the time.
I agree with us. I think we kind of just honored each other and giving each other space, no judgment. If you wanted to go to your quarters and, and do your thing. And I spent a lot of time in my bedroom. Like I said, I was still on a healing journey for internal wounds, and just kind of wanted to be left alone. I didn't want to be consoled, just let be. And Ernie, he journaled a lot and read a lot. I mean, he was searching for everything to read. So like I said, just giving each other, being respectful of each other and wanting that distance, not needing to smother each other during it.
We're not questioning each other.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
to reiterate, once I, rapidly began to recognize the signs, I began to read to understand, why didn't I know it worked this way before? And, as far as processing the grief, if you will, I'm a guy, and, I struggle with my emotions per se, or connecting with my emotions. At least I used to. But I spent a ton of time in the gym. I'm a former athlete. I spent a ton of time in the gym just pounding iron just to work through it. I mean, so yeah, we definitely grieve differently.
Yeah.
I remember Brian and I found a lot of podcasts that we both were interested in, and we would listen to podcasts together. When we would be traveling like up to Columbus to visit his family or whatever, we'd turn on a podcast and just listen to it and, discuss it or whatever. So that was very helpful for us, having that in common. Even though I think for the most part we were on the same page though, pretty much the whole time, but it was nice to have things to listen to together and be able to discuss.
Yeah, it's for me, it was interesting because I didn't really listen much to podcasts before Shana passed, and when she did, it was podcasts for me. And I remember finding Sandra Champlain's podcast, and I still remember she had a download of a video of an audio that what's like going through grief, and I remember playing it, us lying on the bed and listening to it together. And as far as spirituality goes, I was done with church anyway, but she still wanted to go to church. We were going to this evangelical church, and we both agreed at the same time, it's like, this is not working for us. So we started looking around and we found a Unity church, and we started going there together to find something that was more meaningful for both of us.
So for us, it's I can almost pick up on Jeff and Lynn and Christine and Ernie, because in the beginning, Carol just wanted to be locked in the bedroom, left alone, didn't want to see any friends, didn't want any consoling. Outside of her sisters and her mom, it's pretty much Carol's off limits. And that went on for quite a while. And of course, like Brian said, or all you gents said, we kick into this protector mode sometimes. And so this is going to sound strange, but one of the things that kind of got us moving along is, Carol was not doing anything, not eating or anything. And so I'd make her a veggie omelet and bring it upstairs to her, just to kind of, I can't even tell you why, but that's what I started doing. And then after some time passed by, we took a road trip. We were kind of both on sabbatical in the fall, and we went up and spent a couple days in Bryce Canyon. And then one of our dreams for Tyler and I was to ride our Harleys through Yellowstone. So then Carol and I went on up and spent some days in Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons. And so that's church for me as well, being in that outdoor environment. I think that trip really helped us, at least in the beginning. It helped us quite a bit.
I think it's really important to do things together, even if it's just taking a walk together, and I guess the biggest thing is to respect the way the other grieves, and try not to judge, because regardless, we know that our significant others love their kids as much, so we just have to respect the way they grieve. And I'm guilty of that myself, because sometimes I want, like I said in the beginning, I was frustrated because he was grieving. I felt like he wasn't grieving. And then I got frustrated because I felt like as I was healing and moving forward, he was still in this, very down. And then I started to get mad at that. So I think it's so important to realize you can only control how you feel and just be there for each other. And then you'll eventually walk through it together. And we did just like Brian and Ty, we watched things together, YouTube videos. We found Jeffrey Olson. We shared in that together and learned. So
Dr. Mary.
I agree with the other guys, the protector mode, and Lisa was pretty much the same way. Didn't want to see anybody. She'd cry at night, and most of the time I just had to just be there and not judge her and not try to change anything and do my own grieving in my own time. The shower shares the tears with a lot of us, and the struggles is when we were trying to come back together. We're different ways, and what she was referring to, some of the difficulties in our marriage, I would say the spirituality, and when we're trying to relearn the biggest questions of life and death, and what are we doing here? How are you supposed to do this? This isn't supposed to happen, and trying to figure that out. And from our religious background, there's some of those things that you resist, or traditional Christianity would resist in that. However, I'd had plenty of my own experiences. I'd lost several friends when I was younger, and I'd have dreams that seemed like dreams, but I remember telling her before we lost any of the boys, it was like I spent another day with them. I spent another day with my friend, and they visited, and as she said, right 2 days after Anthony passed, it was a similar situation. So as I tried to reconcile those things with where she was headed, it was difficult, and ultimately we got on the same page.
And I'll just be frank, I struggled because he would say things like that. He would say things like, well, I've lost my friends, and in my heart I'm thinking, I've lost all my children. And of course we know they're not lost, but that was me judging his grief, because I have also seen him brought to his knees. He raised Anthony since he was 3 years old. He was just as much Rick's son as mine. And if there's any step parents here listening to that, I think that's key, is knowing and accepting the grief of that other parent, just as much as it was that he was there helping me raise him. We were raising him together. Once again, just as we all say, find something that's similar between you two. There's nothing like being able to text your husband a picture of a license plate, and you don't have to explain it. You both smile, or silly little things that you just know you're gonna get. You just know that's your person. That's your person. And I'll tell you, I'm Italian. It's possible some plants flew through my house. It's just possible. It's possible they might have been in the direction of Rick. I'm not saying it did, but it's possible. It's not all roses. It's certainly not all roses, but not a lot of this path is, until you recognize what we are all here to share with you, that it is possible to do it together, and your kids will lead the way.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point, Lisa. It's not all roses, and we can go through, and often do, difficult times when we're judging each other about whether the other person's grieving the right way or whether they're grieving at all. Some of us want to be left alone, and we have to learn to respect that. And yeah, it takes work. It takes work to get through those rough spots and know that things can get better. And finding things, being intentional about finding things to do together. I was working with a client just the other day, and he said he was going to, I don't know, he's going somewhere in the morning, going to the gun shop or going to the gym or something. And his wife goes, well, can I go with you? And he's like, well, why? And she's like, because after we do that, we can go out to breakfast together. And I was like, that's great, and so look for those little things that we can do just to spend time together. And I know we started becoming more intentional about that. We went from having both girls here to Kayla went away to college to we were suddenly empty nesters and didn't know that we were going to be empty nesters for another 3 or 4 years. So we're getting to know each other in a whole different way that we hadn't been together alone for over 20 years, no, 18 years at that time.
Yeah, it's about reconnecting too, because like you're saying, in the beginning, it's like you want to be, lots of us want to just be left alone. I don't, I want to be by myself or whatever, but it's making that effort to come back together as a couple also that, just takes some work, because marriages work anyway. And then when something, like that happens, it's so easy to get off track and lose what you had before. So yeah, it's really about making an effort to reconnect and get back to enjoy, trying to enjoy and do the things that that brought you happiness together as a couple.
So Teresa says, I worry about not being fair to my husband because we've only been married 5.5 years and he only knew Larry for 2 years. So that goes to what Lisa was saying earlier about, about stepchildren and understanding that relationship that they're grieving also, that the stepfather is grieving as well, even though they may not be their biological child. So I did want to, again, tell people that we are presenting a very positive picture here. We like to do that, but I was concerned, as I said, for me, it's like, because we're thinking, okay, Kayla had already gone away. It was just Shayna, and us, and we hadn't been together alone for a long time, and then suddenly it's the two of us alone, and we're like, everything's different. Grocery shopping is different. I mean, literally everything changes, suddenly. And you're like, that was going to be a hard enough transition if Shayna graduated from high school and gone to college. So it was, there were some concerning times for me, at least. So what about, did anybody have any issues? It sounds like we're kind of on the same page faith-wise, but did anybody go through any situations with that in terms of what your faith beliefs were? Or I know, some of you got into spirituality for sooner than the other one. How did you go about convincing them that the signs were real, for example?
I'd like to answer that. I'd like to go a little bit more in depth about when I said how Elizabeth saved us. So obviously, as Brian said, I'm a medium, and Rick really struggled with that. He very, very much struggled with that. And it was the first Helping Parents Heal conference was coming up. And Elizabeth had known, in fact, I was texting Mark Ireland, can you send me what there is on Christianity and mediumship, and this group supported us so much in that. But Elizabeth had sent out a text that said, can people please take pictures at the conference? I'd like to post some pictures. I called her and I said, Elizabeth, Rick loves to take pictures. Rick won't go to the conference. There's no way he'll go to this conference, but he'll go to take pictures. So Elizabeth reached out to Rick and asked if he would be the photographer for the conference. Rick had no idea he had been set up. So we went to the conference, and lo and behold, Rick was in Christine Salter's room, and Christine was doing pendulum. And Rick came running out of the room with his camera, and he said, Lisa, look at this, look at this. The room changed colors as Christine set the intention. He said, I've looked at all the lights in that room. I looked at everything. There's no way this could have happened. I don't understand this. And all the things he saw as he went from room to room to room to room, it saved our marriage. I'll just tell you, it absolutely saved our marriage. And then the second conference, of course, he was ready and willing and excited to be there and made that beautiful video for everyone. But that saved my marriage.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're coming to the end of our time. I do want to talk again. We talked about some of the difficulties. What were, if any, what silver linings came out of from, I hate to say from your child's passing, but what silver linings have you discovered since this happened?
I'll speak to that. I think that our relationship now is stronger than it was before.
Yeah.
I think we talk about this a little bit, and when I say we, I mean the group. When you have suffered the loss of a child, you kind of start to feel bulletproof, like the world has thrown the absolute worst at you. And if you can survive that, you can survive anything. And we have pretty much thrown ourselves into helping parents heal to do what we can to help. And that brings us a lot of pleasure. And I would say probably we both get more than we give pretty regularly, but our life is fabulous. We love each other more deeply. We live our life in a richer fashion. We have amazing friends, some of whom came over last night, and we talk about the fact that when we get together with our friends now, when we sit down and chat, we talk about stuff that matters. We talk about life. We talk about lows. We talk about passions. It's not the trivial stuff. So the silver lining for us is that we're living our best life.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I'll be honest, Ernie and I were at a crossroads prior to Quentin passing. And his transition actually brought us closer, brought us more present with each other, really made us appreciate and value what we had in our marriage and what we have in our marriage, what we have in one another. So like I always try to say, Quinn blessed us. He blessed us with his presence at birth, and even in his crossing, he has blessed us because we're here, and we now get to share our experiences.
Yeah.
I want to add one thing that we didn't discuss too much tonight, but Tyler has an older brother, our son TJ, and not too long after the accident, he came to us very emotional because he had read, he had read the statistics about the fake statistics, I'll say, Brian, like you said, it's whoever made that up, I don't know where, but he was in tears saying, I lost my brother, I lost my best friend, and now you guys will get divorced because 85% of parents do, whatever the number was.
Right.
And that is absolutely not true. But as these other folks are listening, if you have other children, you got to think about that too, and how they view it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree on that. I had a 16-year-old daughter at that time as well. And she was fearful that, her parents were going to grow apart. And, same thing, her sibling, her only sibling had just transitioned. And the last thing she needed was for her parents to, grow apart. Right. So I agree with that.
I think the other thing, I'm going to speak for me, but I think Brian would agree with this. I realize how fragile life is now, and like wanting to live to the fullest as a couple, as with our daughter Kayla, and just, I feel like we're taking advantage of more things now, and we're even more encouraged to help people and to be with our friends, to make good memories. And I think as a couple, we've just realized that, we've got to grab every second that we have because life really is short.
And I have found that we appreciate things. We don't sweat the small stuff. I used to be such a worried about everything. And that's a big plus for both of us. Sometimes we'll go out with friends that are not part of our group. And just the other night, we went out with a couple that we love dearly. But when we got in the car, I said to my husband, because we were discussing something, and I said, see why I need my people? See why I need my helping parents heal tribe? Because, and of course, I go, they don't get it. And Tony immediately says to me, babe, they don't get it. And then we both said at the same time, well, it's a blessing that they don't get it. But that person that you're with, it doesn't happen right away, but I think if you hang in there and you have your patience, that you can find your way. I know people that in the group, and I won't say names, that, you know, they started off on 2 different pages and it took years, but eventually, I think, like Elizabeth said, like Christine said, our kids help us. And if you just hang in there, they help us figure it out together.
That's a valid point as well. I think, Carol, on the friend situation, growing and going through this, you realize some can handle it, your friends, and continue to be your friends, and then others kind of drop from that list, and they just can't handle it, or they're removed from it, and that's okay, because I don't want them to understand what I'm going through. I just want them to be a friend. So, like, again, it goes back to not judging them. They don't know what they don't know. But then we have our spiritual families, and we have our Helping Parents Heal family, and they're the ones that carry us through this journey.
Right.
And
And
we're
it's
grateful
not
for
that
them.
it's not that I was meaning that they don't get what we've been through, because we were discussing something completely different, but they were making such a big deal about that. And Tony and I were both just like, yeah, but that, because and that's why I said, you know, they don't understand where we're at. Like Lynn and Jeff said, we're bulletproof. This kind of stuff doesn't phase us. And
Right.
that's what I meant by that.
I
So
think we all know that after we lose a child, that instantly about 99% of the world becomes noisy bullshit, and you become bulletproof right away. Oh, sorry. No,
Yeah,
noise.
you know, for us, we have friends that we thought would probably be friends for life that are no longer in our lives. And we had friends that were kind of on the periphery that became very close friends. Because some people can't handle being around you. And I just want to say to people, if that happens, it's okay. No judgment on them. They can't handle it. They'll just go away. And other people will come into your lives. But then when we do get together with our friends, it's so much more rich. We have so much more in-depth conversations, even the ones that haven't lost children, but they get us, they get where we're coming from, and they're interested in what we're doing. So I have a lot of friends that will ask me, like, you know, where are you speaking next and stuff like that, which I didn't think they'd really care, but they do become, you know, they become more interested. So things will change. You know, like I said, we left one church, we started going to another church. Now we don't go to church at all. We do all this kind of stuff. For me, this is my gathering with people to worship, if you want to call it that.
Yes.
My church is actually Unity of Arizona. I listen online for you Arizona peeps. I love listening to the two Richards, and so that's my church.
Wow, nice.
So we're coming
add
close
to the group to say exactly the same thing everybody's saying. The important stuff matters, and there's so much that mattered before that is nothing. And it's pretty easy for us to come to that conclusion real quick together, and then sometimes we just look and can move on. Now, we'd never want to trade it, but the question was, is there a silver lining? And there's definitely been a silver lining, and meeting a lot of good people like are on this thing. That second conference last year, anybody who was there for a couple days and just could see the love shared between all the people who have lost their children, 900 people.
Found their children.
There was staff there who were wishing they could have some of what we had found. That's a pretty good silver lining.
Absolutely.
Brian, I know we're going over, but I just want to add, if anyone is on here and you did divorce or you are having extreme difficulties, please know that you will bring your child into whatever relationship you go into. And so our words, even though we're talking as not divorce and stay together, it's difficult. And sometimes those those, there's situations that are just too overwhelming, and who knows, many of us would have divorced anyway. However, please hear what all of us here are saying, the general. I'll let Brian wrap up, but just know, don't discount what those of us here have had to say, because you will take your child into your new relationship.
Yeah. And the reason why I wanted to have this was frankly, to bust that myth, because I just want to give people hope. It doesn't mean that you're going to stay together, because you could have other issues in your relationship, and this might expose some fissures you've already had. So that's entirely possible. So we want to put that, not say that, oh, if you just do all the right things, everything's going to be okay. But I really wanted people to have hope, because people will look at you and say, you're going to get divorced. Oh, isn't it so sad, that they're not going to be able to make it. And it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy if you think that this is the way it's going to be. And especially because most of us do go through some difficulty. We might judge the other person for the way that they're grieving. Somebody might pour themselves in the work. I've talked to people, like one of the people's, their way of reacting is they never want to mention their child's name because it's too sad for them. They want to put all the pictures away. And the other person wants to mention the child's name, they want the pictures out. So it can be very easy to say to them, well, you don't love him because you want to put the pictures away, not understanding they want to put the pictures away because it hurts too much. With our daughter, Kayla, we talked about having Shayna's body cremated and putting her ashes in an urn. And Kayla goes, no urns. That's too creepy. So we honored Kayla. We said, no, we're not going to do that, because she just, so we have to talk these things through and understand why people feel the way that they do, right? So we have pictures of Shayna all over the place, but we don't have her ashes anywhere in the house.
I have them hidden. Kayla just doesn't know about it.
They're not on display.
Yeah, Brian's right. They're not out, but I do have them.
So are there any questions? Are we going to take anybody have any questions? I know there's been a couple of things in the chat. I think we've addressed those.
Callie Watts had a question. She said, how do you convince your spouse to believe your child is still with you and sends you signs? Personally, I would say keep sharing the signs that your loved one is sending. Keep sharing those with your spouse. While Ernie was getting the signs before me, and I was kind of upset because I wasn't receiving them initially, I still wanted to know of them because I knew mine were coming. They're eventually I know it would get to me. So just keep sharing it. Don't suppress it because you don't want to share it because you don't want to hurt his feelings. Because he got to a point where he didn't want to share with me because he felt, well, you're not receiving the signs. I don't want to hurt your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Don't. Keep sharing, keep talking, because it's one step closer to being open to receiving those signs. So that's what I would state for Callie Watts.
Yeah. And the other thing is, it's a catch-22 because we can never convince anybody else. So I like what you said, Christine. We can share things, but they're going to have to get it on their own. Hopefully your child maybe starts sending signs to them. We all come along in our own time, but find ways that you can share. I tell people, like, I really wish my husband would listen to your podcast. Or I really wish, so maybe find one that might interest them. Find a podcast that has a guest that particular guest might appeal to your spouse, and say, hey, why don't you listen to this? That's what we do with our daughter, Kayla. It's like she doesn't listen to podcasts, but every once in a while I'm like, why don't you listen to this one? Because I think you really like this person, if it's a psychotherapist or something, because that's what she does. So we can find little ways of just putting breadcrumbs out there for people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or the book. There's lots of stuff in the books. Ernie would read books and then he'd read a blurb to me, and I think, okay. Yeah.
And a good way to start, if I can break in here, is by having your husband become a part of Helping Fathers Heal. I am so grateful for that group. And I think that kind of allows dads to be able to start down that path of being with a group of friends that understand and who talk about signs as well, or who don't talk about signs, but who are all in it together. And I want to very quickly remind people that they need to sign up if they'd like to, but there's an event for Helping Fathers Heal in person this Sunday, and it's going to be at a great place for dads to go. It's called LC Classics. So it's classic cars. It's from 9:30 to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There's a limited amount of people that can be there, 35 people. But if you want to learn more about it, Jeff is organizing this event, and please reach out to Jeff Holohan. So anyway, and I want to thank all of you for being here. This was the best panel. I hope that people will watch it and rewatch it. I truly appreciate you, Brian, for hosting this, and for all of you for being a part of it. Oh my gosh, all of these wonderful Shining Light parents that are all a huge part of my life and a huge part of Helping Parents Heal as well, and a huge part of Irene's life. I wanted to also say that before we go, if you all would like to, and Jeff's putting his phone number in the chat box, which is wonderful. If you'd like to say thank you and good evening to everyone, please feel free to unmute and say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thank you. Love
Thanks,
you
Brian.
all.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Have a
Wonderful.
good
Bye,
evening.
everyone.
Brian.
Good night.
Have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful evening. Take